When we talk about muscle cars of the 1960s, one name always rises to the top: Carroll Shelby. The man who transformed Ford's already popular Mustang into something wild, brutal, and unforgettable. And among all the Shelby Mustangs, the 1968 Shelby GT500 stands as one of the most iconic creations of that golden muscle car era. This machine was not just a Mustang with stripes, it was a statement of raw American horsepower, racing spirit, and timeless style. The story of the 1968 GT500 begins with the success of earlier Shelby Mustangs. By the mid-1960s, Carroll Shelby had already cemented his reputation with the Cobra and the GT350. Ford wanted something bigger, something more powerful, something that would sit at the very top of the Mustang family. That's when the GT500 was born. The 1967 model year had introduced the GT500 for the first time, powered by a massive 428 cubic inch V8 engine. But the 1968 GT500 refined that formula, making it sleeker, faster, and more refined while still maintaining its brutal edge. This wasn't just a pony car, it was a full-blown muscle car with Shelby's racing DNA running through every bolt. At first glance, the 1968 Shelby GT500 is unmistakable. It carried an aggressive front end with a longer fiberglass nose, a larger grille, and a pair of big, rectangular driving lamps that gave it a fierce, predatory look on the road. The functional scoops on the hood weren't there just for style, they helped cool down that massive V8 lurking underneath. On the sides, you had racing-inspired stripes and rear quarter-panel scoops that made the car look muscular and athletic. Around back, the car borrowed taillights from the Mercury Cougar, giving it a distinctive appearance compared to the standard Mustang. But it wasn't only about looks. Under the hood, the standard GT500 came with Ford's 428 Police Interceptor V8, producing around 360 horsepower and loads of torque. This was the kind of engine that didn't just accelerate, it launched you forward with brute force. Some versions even came equipped with the legendary 428 Cobra jet, introduced later in 1968, which gave the car even more bite on the drag strip. Mated to either a 4-speed manual or a heavy-duty automatic, the GT500 had the power to back up its aggressive design. Step inside the 1968 Shelby GT500, and you'll notice that it was built with both performance and comfort in mind. The interior was more upscale than your typical Mustang, with wood grain trim, a Shelby Cobra logo steering wheel, and a full set of performance gauges to remind you that this was no ordinary pony car. Bucket seats, a center console, and optional air conditioning made it just as comfortable cruising down the highway as it was roaring down a quarter-mile strip. Carroll Shelby always had racing in his blood, but by 1968, the Shelby Mustangs were evolving from raw race-ready machines into more refined, high-performance grand touring cars. That shift is clear in the GT500. It was fast and aggressive, but it was also stylish, luxurious, and built for buyers who wanted both speed and presence. In 1968, Ford and Shelby also introduced special versions, like the GT500 KR, which stood for King of the Road. This beast featured the new 428 Cobra jet engine rated at 335 horsepower, though everyone knew it made much more in reality. The GT500 KR was Shelby's ultimate weapon, a car that combined muscle, mystique, and exclusivity. Driving the 1968 Shelby GT500 was an experience like no other. The deep rumble of the 428 V8, the raw surge of torque, and the aggressive stance of the car made you feel like a king behind the wheel. It wasn't just transportation, it was theater, a rolling performance of sound, power, and style. Unlike some European sports cars that relied on precision and handling, the Shelby GT500 was about dominance, the sheer thrill of unleashing raw horsepower on the open road. Only a limited number of 1968 Shelby GT500s were built, which makes them highly collectible today. Each car was hand-assembled with Shelby's special touches, making every one a piece of history. Collectors today see the GT500 not just as a muscle car, but as an icon of American automotive culture. The rarity, combined with Carroll Shelby's legendary name, makes it one of the most sought-after Mustangs ever produced. But the story of the 1968 GT500 isn't just about specs and numbers, it's about what it represented. It was the height of the muscle car wars, when automakers were battling for bragging rights on the street and the track. The GT500 was Ford's ultimate weapon in that war, a car that screamed American power louder than almost anything else on the road. Pop culture also played a big role in keeping the Shelby Mustangs alive in people's hearts. Over the years, Shelby Mustangs have appeared in countless movies, TV shows, and car magazines. They became symbols of rebellion, freedom, and individuality. And even decades later, when people hear the name GT500, their minds immediately go to those long hoods, snarling engines, and bold racing stripes. The 1968 GT500 also marked a turning point in Shelby's relationship with Ford. By the end of the 1960s, Ford began taking more control of the Shelby program, and Carroll Shelby himself started stepping back from the Mustang project. That makes the 1968 model especially significant. It's one of the last Shelbys to truly carry Carroll Shelby's personal influence before Ford turned the Mustang Shelby line into more of a mainstream performance package. Today, owning a 1968 Shelby GT500 is like owning a piece of American history. At auctions, these cars fetch six-figure prices, and pristine examples or special editions like the GT500 KR can go even higher. Enthusiasts restore them with great care, making sure every detail, from the scoops to the stripes, is preserved just as it was in the late 1960s. But perhaps the most powerful thing about the 1968 Shelby GT500 is its legacy. It set the stage for future generations of performance Mustangs. Even the modern GT500s, with their supercharged engines and cutting-edge technology, trace their bloodline back to that wild creation of 1968. The DNA of power, performance, and bold design lives on. When you see one of these cars today, whether it's cruising down the highway or gleaming under the lights at a car show, it immediately commands respect. The lines, the sound, the presence, they remind us of a time when cars weren't just machines. They were rolling pieces of art, reflections of culture, and expressions of freedom. The 1968 Shelby GT500 wasn't perfect. It was heavy, it wasn't the sharpest in handling, and it guzzled fuel like there was no tomorrow. But none of that mattered, because it delivered something more important: the thrill. The thrill of raw horsepower. The thrill of American ingenuity. The thrill of Carroll Shelby's vision brought to life. And that's why, decades later, we're still talking about it. The 1968 Shelby GT500 remains one of the most iconic muscle cars ever made, a legend that continues to inspire car enthusiasts, collectors, and dreamers alike. So when you hear the name Shelby GT500, remember, it's not just a car. It's a symbol of power, style, and freedom. It's a legend of the open road, and one of the greatest creations of the muscle car era.